Socialist realism was a style of art prevalent in the Soviet Union, depicting socialist values like working-class revolution and socialist icons such as Stalin and Lenin in a hyper-real fashion. The subtext was that socialism was the way forward, and was the only viable system for humanity's future. Stalin labelled artists as engineers of the human soul. They were, and still are, able to dictate the course of the prevailing public mood. Stalin sought to use socialist realism to make his people really believe socialism was the best alternative to the aristocracy and feudalism communism liberated Russia from. But what is capitalist realism? Most of the world never went to communism from feudalism. It went to the economic system of capitalism. In what is arguably Mark Fisher's most famous work, Capitalist Realism, he described this phenomenon, a play on words of the already established idea of socialist realism. It is the current cultural acceptance of capitalism, in the sense that it is seen as the only viable economic system. Capitalism is the reality, and it is accepted by all. This of course does not mean Fisher thought capitalism was the best system, but he did believe people had come to accept it as the truth, although he of course did not. This led him to Great Depression, as he struggled to see humanity making its way out. This is seen in the 2008 bank bailouts, where even though the banks had essentially failed due to economic crises, proving the flaws of capitalism, and potentially crippling it, they were bailed out. Their mistakes were ignored and forgiven, as they are such an essential part of the capitalist system. Society clings on to capitalism even when it literally fails in front of us. It is our reality, and we are protecting it. This capitalist realism has been prevalent even in British politics throughout the 20th century, especially in leftist circles. Take the Labour Party. It initially was a party founded by socialists, many with the intent of slowly transforming government and society away from capitalism and into socialist utopia, such as Beatrice Webb, who wrote Clause 4 of the Labour Party, which called for common ownership. This can be defined as democratic socialism, a democratic party aiming to refute capitalism with democratic means and move towards socialism. Capitalist realism had evidently not yet set in, as there was still hope for another system post-capitalism. Yet, following Margaret Thatcher and the move towards neoliberalism, Labour rebranded itself to fit the move towards the acceptance of capitalism as the truth. This was New Labour under Tony Blair throughout the 90s and early 2000s, an adoption of neoliberal policies and third-way socialism. This was a type of socialism that kept the social awareness and class consciousness to a degree, retaining their branding of advocating for the working class, but removing any notion of a post-capitalist society. They thought to use taxes generated from free, laissez-faire markets and private ownership, pushed by the neoliberal conservative former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, to invest in welfare such as health and education. They were using capitalism as a means to socialism, without thinking of moving past it. While this may still be socialist, it is now socialism within capitalism, cementing this idea of capitalist realism, as the party had to accept that capitalism was going nowhere in order for the party to remain successful. They could not overcome it. For example, they implemented a new version of Clause 4, removing any mention of common ownership, which still remains removed to this day, showing that Tony Blair's changes have successfully made the party complacent of capitalism. This, of course, does not mean there is a lack of criticism of the current global economic system. More than ever, criticism of capitalism is prevalent all over the internet. But this criticism is always of a specific aspect, a way in which capitalism could improve to be more moral, more fair, or more just. It is never proposing a complete alternate system. We are just tweaking the one we already have, suggesting this is the end. Capitalism is the be-all and end-all. The YouTube channel Mad Blender analyses this through the lens of mental illness in a great video called Capitalist Realism, Mental Illness and Societies of Control, where she notes how it is only ever the symptoms of mental illness that are treated. I shall link this video down in the description below. Drugs are prescribed, therapeutic techniques are used to calm patients down, yet the actual root of much mental illness, the alienation of the self which capitalism causes, is never addressed. I do not see this as any malintent of medical practitioners, yet it signals this overarching sentiment that capitalism cannot be solved, it cannot be overturned, the symptoms can only be numbed through drugs. The TLDR of capitalist realism, then, is that there is a mood in the 21st century that capitalism cannot be overturned, and that there is no alternative. This is not necessarily the case, but it is an analysis of what people seem to think, and thus how we act. Remember to subscribe to see more philosophy and politics in your feed.